Gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Man to Man here on the 360 Man. I'm Jesse Behringer, and today we are talking singleness. Here to join me for the conversation is Maurice Mercado. He's a devoted husband, father of three, and Star Wars aficionado. For 29 years, he's been actively pursuing Jesus throughout his life as an elder, mentor, and faithful follower of Jesus. Maurice, thank you so much for being here, man.
Thank you, man. When you say elder, it's like, I'm like the
I'm
old.
wise.
I'm wise beyond my years, but I'm happy to be here. Happy to oblige.
Oh, great, man. I'm so excited to have this conversation for you today, so let's get started.
Let's do it.
So it may be a weird point to enter into this conversation, but I think of singleness, that scene from Dumb and Dumber, right? The whole movie is just an absolute ball of fun, but there's a really heartfelt moment in there when Harry and Lloyd are in his apartment and our pets' heads are falling off and they're talking about Lloyd saying to him, he's like, you know what I'm sick and tired of?
Sick and tired of being a nobody. But most of all, I'm sick and tired of having nobody.
When I hear that scene, it makes me think about this topic, about singleness for guys. And I think a lot of guys out there would agree that the word singleness and the word alone seem to go together. Like they seem interchangeable with one another. Yeah. And I think for a lot of guys, that's an issue for a lot of us, is singleness and being alone.
Well, yeah, you think of singleness, you think of loneliness.
Yeah.
Like because you're single, you're missing out. And more so now that we are living in a world that's like so connected, and I'm doing quotation marks, I'm doing air quotes. We're so connected, but we're really so disconnected, and everybody has the fear of missing out, that FOMO, but that now translates into singleness. Like we're missing out on something, but as we know, as we'll learn and as we'll talk about, like you're not really missing out on what God has for you, because no matter where you are in life, God has a plan for you.
Absolutely. But it's hard. It's hard to be single. It's hard to be, I know you could speak on that here today, but I mean, it's difficult. We could just acknowledge, we can address the elephant in the room. It is 100% difficult. It's a struggle. And I think, but why is that? Why is that so hard for us as guys? What do you think it is specifically for guys that makes it hard to be single as a guy?
I mean, the obvious reason would be because it's a sexual struggle. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it. I mean, we're men, we are physical beings. I think if you want to really get into it, the nitty gritty, I think men are very physical when it comes to desire. Women are more emotional, that's why romance novels are very popular. But then there's also why our world is inundated with pornography and, pornographic type of imagery and things in our culture, because it attracts us visually. And I think so that now as a single person, you're always thinking, oh my gosh, it's just a struggle. Like they say, the gift of singleness, we immediately think well, it must be somebody that gift must be the gift of not having desires then. But it's not. It's not that at all. So it's there's that struggle, that sexual struggle, but then also there's a cultural struggle and a social struggle, which is we are, from the time we are little kids watching movies and TV shows, we are programmed to believe that unless you have somebody in your life, you're a loser, you're lonely.
That's a great answer. I really relate to that personally, because I'm so consumed in media and I love watching movies, and I love me some rom coms, man. I do. I love them, but it distorts our perception of what you're supposed to be as a man. And you're not supposed to be alone, and you're supposed to have a girl at your hip, and you're supposed to, no matter what. And I think that's, as a guy, it's really disintegrating us and what we're supposed to be, and our own beliefs in ourselves and our insecurities just blow up from there.
Yeah. I mean, I heard or read somewhere that, it's sad, but it's true that we men, a big majority of men, we will struggle silently with things like depression and loneliness, but it's a silent struggle. You know, like I think women have that ability to be able to share with one another, with, you know, their girlfriends or their people that they're close with, and in a Christian environment, be able to share those prayer requests and really dig deep in those relationships, where I think guys, it's hard for us to do that. It's hard for us to open up. It's hard for us to wear our heart on our sleeve, and it's hard for us to tackle the feelings in general. Just tackle the feelings, like be able to share with someone and say, hey man, like this is how I'm feeling. I think that's why biblical friendships are so important. And no matter what people say, when you finally get into a marriage, when you finally meet a person that you're going to marry and commit your life to, that person can't satisfy every single one of your needs. And that's something that you need to like know right off the bat.
You need to know right now.
You can't put that pressure on them. You can't satisfy all of their needs. They can't satisfy all of your needs. Sometimes you need your bro that you can talk to, that you can share with, that is going through a similar struggle. And that's just part of life. That's part of friendships and like those three categories of people that I always think of on a former pastor share with me, which is like have somebody that you look up to, have somebody that you're mentoring, and have somebody that's on the same level as you, that you're kind of is your peer. And I think so if we have those strong relationships, singleness will get better. Like there's a C.S. Lewis quote that says like, you know, like life is hard or something like that, but it's more doable with a good friend.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm paraphrasing it horribly, but it's something like that, you know.
Well, and we had just talked about this too recently here on the podcast, you know, about brotherhood and the importance of it, the value of it, right? We're not going to, even when you get into a marriage, that's not going to fulfill your void for a need of brotherhood and a need of connection with other men. So,
and that's going to help you, and that will help you in your singleness. You know, that in itself is a gift, having good friends, because that's going to help you in that season of your life, however long it'll be.
Absolutely. What was your life like during the single part of your life? What was that like for you?
You know, I grew up very, you know, it was, I wouldn't say that I was full-blown insecure, but there was like insecurities. And I think that was like, it goes back to this idea that I find that, you know, young men and even boys and even, you know, young boys and children, like we don't do a good job raising boys and girls to be able to interact together better. Like I think I look at my own sons and I look at how friendly they are. And because from when they were little, we've always made sure that they play with everybody in the playground. But I think because of that, it's hard. You get to a point where then it becomes hard to interact with the opposite sex, with girls. And I was that kid. I was that kid that was like shy. I eventually would use like comedy and just being funny in class as like my way in to like conversate with girls and become friends with girls. And that was like my way. But of course, you know, that only leads to the friend zone, you know? So like all roads lead to the friend zone.
They all lead there.
And so like, it was really hard. So then when it would become a situation where it was like, all right, I like this girl, she likes me, I would always be into my own head about it. Like, rather than just take advantage of like, this is a friend that's a girl, I would immediately be like, okay, but am I wasting my time here? Is this person like, are we going to really connect? Like, should I even date this girl? Is she a Christian? Like, I would fill my head with all these things where like, it made me miserable almost. It made singleness miserable. Like I would hang out with buddies of mine and like, you know, other guys that were single or like guys that were dating. And it would be like, one minute I'd be like envying this guy because he has a girlfriend and he's in a committed relationship. Oh man, I want a girl. And then the other minute I'm like, you know, looking and be like, these girls, you know, like, you know,
stop. I don't need them.
They're just so distracting, you know. And so it was like I wasn't able to enjoy singleness. And it's like somebody that wants to get in shape, but they're constantly like watching baking shows and like constantly like going out to the diner and fast food. It's like, get yourself away from the things that causing you this misery and not helping you achieve your goals. So like, you know, you're watching, I'm a big TV guy. I like love as a kid. I mean, the 80s were like the haven of like sitcoms, and every single sitcom had that trope of like the girl the boy crazy, crazy for the boys, you know, the girls that are like boy hungry and like, you know, and like this idea of dating and ooh, like, you know, oh my gosh, and their kiss and all of that, movies, rom-coms, all of that is like you're feeding yourself this constantly, and then you look at your own life and you're just like, why is my life not like this?
Yeah.
Like, why am I not like having meet cutes with, why am I not like in the rain, like tripping over somebody and their papers fall and I'm, oh, hi, how are you? And having like the meet cute, like,
right.
which is what they say in the biz, but like, why am I not having that in my life? You know, and you miss out because you're worried about that. You end up missing out. So I feel like I missed out on taking advantage of my singleness and the gift that it is. You know, it's not like waiting to see if I have the gift of singleness. It's that you're single. It's a gift. Enjoy it. Make the most out of it. You know, God says he has a plan for you, for your future, but like be in the present, and the present is now. So and it's present. The present is a gift. It's a gift. I didn't do that. I feel like I just worried myself into like living just frustrated as a single person.
I know that all too well. I know that all too well.
There is hope, my friend.
Well, thank you. And a lot of times, you know, I read this in this book, The 7 Myths of Being Single, right? That we're going to spend most of our lives as men single, right? So, you know, there's this guy writing the book and he's saying, you know, my grandfather, he was married to his wife for 50 years and she passed away, and he was this age when he met her, and now he's by the time he dies, you know, he's shooting on 100. Yeah. He's going to be lived longer single than he will have being married, even though he's married for 50 years. And that was just such a reality check for him. Like, wow. So like, we've got to know as men how to be alone. Like, I mean, not alone in the sense that there's nobody here with us, because that's not what we're talking about, but just how to be single, like knowing how to do that. And you know, that leads me towards, you know, singleness is not an issue. It's not a problem that we need to fix. Right. And I think, like you said, it's a gift that we need to learn to appreciate and use. How do we use this gift, right?
It's a time in your life where you learn to be, first of all, learn to be a man. You know, I think if from like an early age, you're always like in a relationship or dating or, you know, puppy love with a girl in school, whatever.
You don't know how to be a man yourself, right?
You become codependent on a person. And again, when you get married, you cannot depend on this person that you married to fulfill. Only God can fulfill you, and she can fulfill you in certain areas, but you also need mentors and friends, pastors, and you know, there's like it's a team effort. Christianity is like a team effort. Everybody's involved. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise a person, you know, and so like you miss out on, you know, hey, like if you're single and like you're living alone and you're, you know, working, I mean, that's a beautiful thing. That's a gift. Like you're learning to be independent and mature, and you know how to take care of yourself. You know, my mom passed away recently, and now my dad is alone. You know, he's single. So he's like, you know, cooking for himself now and cleaning. And like, he said something that was like hilarious to me. I didn't laugh, but like, he was just like, oh yeah, you know, I'm like, every time I make myself dinner, it's like, man, I'm like tired. I got to clean up the whole kitchen and all this stuff. And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, Mom did that for 40 years. So like now you're getting a taste of it, you know? So like he's back to basically being a bachelor, being single, like, and you know, it's like what you said, like it was a big portion of his life that before he met my mom, and now God willing, there'll be a portion of his life after my mom. So isn't it good that maybe in your singleness, wouldn't it be a good idea to learn as much as you can about being you? And because you're stuck with you, you know, until you go to heaven. So like, take advantage of that time. Like I would always tell my brother and my brother-in-law, like when they were in college, I'm like, you know, this is the best time for you to, unfortunately, it sounds bad, but this is the best time for you to be selfish, to make it all about you, because once you are married, once you're in a relationship, once you're married, it's not about you ever again. It's about taking care of, especially as a man, you're the head of the home. You're responsible for everyone in that home, beginning with your wife and then your children. And you're going to give an account to God what you did. Did you pray with your wife every night? Did you wash her with the word? Did you, raise those kids in the way that they should go? Like, it's all on me. And that's a huge responsibility. Whereas when you're single, your responsibility is you and God, and then how can you be of service?
Let's talk about that. I love this verse in 1 Corinthians 7. 1 Corinthians 7 is just all about being single. And so just go read that, because it's such an encouragement and what Paul is writing. And he's just, you could tell he's like, oh, man, I got to give some encouragement to my brothers in singleness here. He says, the unmarried man is concerned about the things of the Lord, but a married man is concerned about the things of this world. How can he please his wife? And his interests are divided. And that's talking about, he's saying there, when I'm single, my only objective is how can I serve God? How can I further God's kingdom? How can I just be a vessel with no tethered obligations? When I'm married, my service, my obligations are to my wife, right? It's to serve God absolutely together in unison, but I am now giving all that I am to serve my wife there. And that's just a lot to unpack. I mean, unpack that for me too.
And unfortunately, what happens is we use our singleness as an excuse. Like, we'll say, well, I'll do it, I'll serve. I'm so busy now. I'm working, or I'm trying to find somebody. I'm trying to find somebody, and we use that as an excuse to do the things that God maybe is putting before us to do. It is your interests are divided. Like and not to say, let me just get this right off the bat, like, not to say that, like, we're not bashing marriage. Like, we're not saying, like, be single, it's the best. Like, we're not, like, encouraging people to stay single.
But there's give and take. There's the benefits and there are the drawbacks. Yeah. And what Paul is saying here, right? He's writing to the whole congregation. We just, our pastor here at our church just preached on this very recently, saying that God speaks so highly of marriage. Like, please work towards marriage, get married. But he's also saying, like, and through Paul, I wish that you were as I am, right? I wish that you could experience this time and being an encouragement to no doubt all these other single guys like Timothy and all these people. You have this opportunity. Use it.
And bottom line, whether you're single or you're married, the goal is to be a servant, to not be selfish, to be a servant. When you're single, be serving, because if you're not serving, you're swerving. Like, if you're not, you're wasting time. Don't waste time. This is something I teach my kids all the time. Like, our time is precious. Like, time is the most valuable thing that we have, and once we spend it, we don't get it back. Once you give it, you don't get it back. So who are you investing your time in? What are you investing your time in? Because you'll never get that back. You'll look back at your life and you'll say, man, like, I invested it in the wrong people. I invested it in the wrong things, and you don't get that back. And that is whether you're single or whether you're married. It's all about serving. You're either serving others in your singleness, you're serving your family in your marriage. But it's bottom line is, don't be selfish.
Yeah. So Maurice, if you could, you're married now. How long have you been married for?
17 years.
17 years. Yeah. That's amazing, man. Congrats.
17 years.
If you could, now that you've been married for 17 years, right? I loved, again, our pastor preached on this super recently, so it's all fresh in the brain. And he's like, when you're single, you're always worried about that time, like, just of being married, and you're thinking about, I want to be married, I want to be in that relationship. When you're married, you're thinking about all that time that I had when I was single.
Yes.
What have the times been, like, in your 17 years of marriage, that you would invest in and impart knowledge onto the younger generation while you're single? What do you wish that you could have done to serve God and use that gift?
I right off the bat, I think, had I had more time, in my singleness, I was working, and being able to support yourself is also an opportunity to be able to support others and to give and be generous. Like I think of like just going on missions trips. You know, like my wife and I, before we had kids, we went on missions trips and we traveled and we did all that, and it was great. But the idea of being able to just like hear a call like, hey, we need people to come to Guatemala for this, and be able to go, yeah, I'll go. Yeah. And just have take advantage of those opportunities of even, even just helping others in your local church and being available. Because when you're single, you also have opportunity to meet as many people as you can. Like your network can be so big in your singleness. Not that it can't when you're married, but when you're married, your focus is different. It's a different network. It's a different type of thing. Like your wife, your kids, and then everything that like is associated with your wife, your kids, and that life and that family life. But when you're single, man, you the sky's the limit as far as just being able to make yourself available for other people, for events, for causes, and for the church. I think I definitely would have wished to have taken advantage of that more. Like it goes back to selfishness. I feel like I wish I had had more time to be selfless in my singleness. Yeah. I was so caught up in, I don't want to be single, that I missed out on the gift that it was, where I would have been able to been just more available. Yeah. 'Cause now I wish I was more available to do certain things. And I'm like, well, I have responsibilities that prevent me, and it's okay to say no to things. But when you're single, like it's a lot easier to say yes to things.
Yeah. And why not? Why not try these things? Why not get out there, and why not just see? My dad uses this analogy of like, I don't know what to do. Like there's so many paths I can take in my life right now, talking as a single guy, right? Well, what do I do? Well, God, he uses this analogy of that you're on a playground, right? And God puts you in the playground. Well, do I go on the swings? Do I go on the slide? Do I go on the monkey bars? God says, go on any one that you want, right? Yeah. I put you in the playground here. I'm gonna give you this opportunity and let you have fun on either one of these. Just don't go into the street, right? And so I love that analogy because it gets me excited about this time in my life and us as guys in this younger time, or wherever you're at. If you're single when you're 30, you're single when you're 20, you're having this time of this opportunity to go down the slide. Well, let me try the swings, and be in this playground to try things out and to serve and do those things.
And to kind of connect a little bit to the beginning where we talked about why singleness, one of the reasons why singleness is so hard is because there is that idea of there's the sexual part where there's the desire. I think it's a lot easier to battle that, to have victory over that when you're good busy, when you're busy in the things of God and in the things that are like giving you actual joy that you're pursuing. I think we sometimes get caught up in being bad busy, which the acronym that I learned one time for busy was like being under Satan's yoke, which is like, that's bad busy. That's the bad busy of singleness, where it's all about the pursuit. It's all about playing games. It's all about, dating and serial dating and just going out and meeting people and hooking up. And, if you're bad busy, then you're going to have a long time being single and miserable and not fulfilled. But if you're good busy, if you're pursuing God and pursuing good relationships with women and men, like, you can have so much friendships. Again, your network could be so big. It could lead to so many things. And as Pastor Jared was sharing, then the analogy with the ladder is like, as you're climbing that ladder, you look across to see the person who's at your level, and God will reveal to you who are the people that you should be around and who could be a potential mate. But in that singleness, like, there's just that opportunity to really grow as a person and find out who you are in Christ a lot easier, and be able to be there for other people. Like, it's really about that selflessness.
Yeah. And I want to swing back to what you said earlier, because this is just a huge, you can't gloss over it, of the whole sexual desires part of singleness. And I think there's such a, maybe, let me just be in a relationship so I don't have to have those sexual temptations or
Right.
those, let me just get married so I can not have to deal with that anymore. Or once I'm married, I won't have to deal with that anymore, which is just not the truth, right?
It's the way bad. It's a bad plan.
Yeah.
It's a bad plan.
It's a very bad plan. And so I think that, as guys, when you're working through your singleness, you need to work on your purity. Like that's the time to do it. I know so many married people that have just said again and again and again, that purity issue does not go away when you get married, right? And you need to be like established when you are getting married of how firm you are in your purity, because now there are stakes, right? Now we're not just, sinning against our own flesh, against someone else's flesh, like to become one.
Yeah.
And that's where brass tacks comes in and the, pavement meets the road.
Yeah, you're not your own. You don't belong to you anymore. You belong to this other person, and they belong to you. And that's a real thing. I mean, you can't dance around it. You can't ignore it. Like, yes, when you're single, when you're a man, attraction to women and your eyes and lust, it plays a big part in singleness. And I think that's what is probably the biggest struggle of singleness. And in my own life, I just, I always have had, that even from a young age, attracted to female body parts and the female figure, and having crushes on celebrities and girls in your class. And all of that is tied into this just, we're sinful creatures. We take something that's pure and beautiful and we twist it in our own, and then add to that the media and what we're feeding ourselves and watching on TV and listening to and what other guys are telling us. That's why I think it's so important to have like good relationships and good friendships and learn from an early age to be able to be honest with other people. That's something that I really want to be able to do with my sons. I have 3 sons, and I want to be able to have like as uncomfortable as it could be, have open conversations with them about sex and attraction. And, just because these other guys are saying these things about those girls, like, this is the reality. This is how it is. And I think to have all of those tools will help you in your singleness, because it's not easy. I know, there's everything from pornography to masturbation to all these things are real struggles in a man's life in their singleness. And guess what? It doesn't really change much when you get married. I hate to break it to everyone listening. Like, when you're married, you're still going to have, if you had struggles in this area as a single person, it doesn't just go away because you got a wedding ring on. It doesn't, it's not like you put the ring on, the ring of power, and it's just, and all of a sudden you're He-Man and you can battle. No, it's still a struggle. You're still going to be attracted to women. You're still going to find things. There's still going to be lust, and it's just, I have heard it put this way, like, as a Christian, the goal is you're always going to be there. There's always going to be sin in your life. But the goal is that, like, instead of the space in between sin episodes, you want the space between them to get wider and wider, to the point where they're still going to be there, but they're not going to be a struggle anymore. And I think that should be the game plan. Us guys, we're all about games. We're all about like setting a goal. That should be our goal. Like, yes, deal with it. This is an issue. I'm always going to have lust. That's going to be an Achilles heel for me. So how do I deal with it? I make sure that I have safeguards in my life to prevent me from falling. I have people in my life that I can be open and honest with. They know that that's a struggle. So you can be real with people. You can have real conversations. And then that way, you may fall in certain times. You may you may fall. But like, as long as you're working towards having the space in between those episodes to be wider and wider, if that makes sense, that should be the goal. But it's about, learning to be the man that God has called you to be, and having people in your life, other guys that you can be single with and bounce off each other. And it's only going to make you better for when you finally do get married, or not finally, but if you then get married, it's going to help you. These are the tools that you're going to be able to bring into your marriage instead of baggage, which you don't want to bring that in.
Jonathan Pokluda in the outdated book we read said, there are no married people problems. There are only single people problems carried into marriage.
Yes.
And I love that because it's that you have baggage, and the single time in your life is the time to narrow out that baggage and get rid of it and shrink it down. So this concept of getting through singleness, I think there's one of two ways that we can look at it, right? You can survive your singleness or you can thrive in your singleness. What's the difference there? How am I just surviving in my singleness, and how am I thriving? Break that down for me.
If your main meal is only on Sunday and you're not feeding yourself throughout the week, then you're just malnutrition. You're just gonna be you're just dying as a Christian. You're not gonna make it. So like if you're just gonna do it halfway and not meet God, you're not going to thrive. I think it's really about just pursuing it and being intentional, like anything else, whether it's health, fitness, like taking up a skill or learning something new. Like, easier said than done, folks. I'm not perfect at this, but I have my moments where I commute to work and I'm driving, and I'll look at as the sun is coming up, because it's really early when I leave, and I just see like the sun just breaking through the mountains. Sometimes it's a beautiful commute. And I just think to myself, like, wow, God, like I got to trust you.
Yeah.
And these are the things that we need to constantly be preaching to ourselves and reminding ourselves. And that's why relationships with other godly people, even in your singleness, other godly single people, is so important, because you guys can hold each other up.
I think what you said about intentionality, right? In my life, I've experienced moments where I'm saying, yeah, I'm intentionally single, but it's because there are no options. There are no other there's no other choice for me than to be single right now in my life. And so I think that intentionality, what you said, really speaks to me of like, no, you got to commit. You got to get off that dating app. You got to get out of the flirtatious conversations you're having, and you've got to be intentional, because if not, you are doing it halfway. You're just surviving. You're not thriving.
And it's not easy, because you have to change. It's a mindset, right? You have to, these are my brothers in Christ. These are my sisters in Christ. Yeah. Or you know what? I mean, you're out there in the world, and you see what you see, and it's like, well, that's a woman that needs Jesus. That's not just some woman that's sexy, and it's a mindset that you have to change. Like what you said, like can men and women be friends? Well, it depends on you. It's not like a general thing. It's not, well, generally speaking, no, it's dependent on you. Can you make it work? Can you really take advantage of the fact that, you can be friends with somebody that's a woman and really learn from that.
Yeah. And learn
grow.
The qualities that you want for a potential mate in your life.
Yeah.
Discern what those are. I think that just because you're single doesn't mean you're not deciding what you're looking for in a future spouse. And what you said earlier about becoming the man that she's hoping for.
Right. And when you think of it in that sense, that's what the beauty of friendships and biblical friendships is, and fellowship, actual fellowship. I think we throw that word around so much, but actual fellowship with other people is like really growing. Like you think about the early church and how like they shared meals together, they hung out, they, I'm sure there were single people in there. You know what I mean?
There definitely were. Timothy was leading the Corinthian church. Like, absolutely.
That's how they thrived. That's how you thrive.
Together.
Like it's together. You thrive together. The enemy is like a roaring lion seeking who to devour, who to destroy. And he's going to go after the weakest link. He's going to go after the ones that are like struggling in their singleness, unfortunately. Those are the people that are going to be like tempted away from the things of God. Those are the people that are going to be tempted away into doing things. I mean, and it's like start small. It's a little sin. It's a little thing here, a little thing there. Before you know it, they're like all the way on the other side of the field. And you're just like, how did you get over there? That's why it's so important to have good relationships and good community. It's not just about like, well, you have to go to church then. Well, yes, that's where you meet all the people that are struggling in the same boat as you.
That's where community comes from. Real meaningful community.
But then it extends after that. You got to build friendships. And so getting back a little bit to that question of like, in my singleness, what would I have done better? Another thing I would have done better is have better relationships with other fellow believers, because I didn't really have that. I mean, obviously you can't go back and change things, but we kind of are in giving this advice to those that are single, that like, man, just take advantage of it. Like it's because it's gonna be gone.
Yeah.
You know, it'll be gone. And not to say that you're going to be like, oh, it's gone, the good old days back when I was single. It's just enjoy it, because like Pastor Jared was saying, the present is a present. So enjoy it now.
So I put it like this, right? What we're getting in this conversation, there's really 4 things. I heard this said to me in a sermon, right? You've got to develop deep and meaningful relationships.
Yeah.
You need to discern what qualities you're looking for in a future spouse during your time of singleness. You need to discern God's mission for your life. You know, where is my mission? What's my purpose? You know, like what, and both in, you know, you as a man, and like, what's my mission towards serving God? What does God want to do through me? And establishing that before you put a ring on the finger.
Right.
And then, you know, with the person you want to get married to, be in a relationship with, do they have the same mission? Are we on mission together? And then lastly, just trust God. Just trust God to, in his timing, bring that person to you. Yeah. And in your 24 years when that was happening, I'm sure those times that girl said to you, we're not meant to be together, you're like, dang it. Yeah. It's another one. But that time that God spent shaping you in those 24 years, I bet was just such a blessing to finally look back on your wedding day and 16 years of marriage, 17 years of marriage to say, I'm so glad that it happened the way it did.
And you know, my wife and I know people that are, you know, older, maybe like in their 30s or even 40s, and they're still kind of like struggling in their singleness, and playing the game of like the dating game, and not knowing if this relationship is going anywhere, and then this person and that person. And my question is always, okay, but like, what are you doing for God right now? Like, are you consistent in are you forsaking the assembly? Like, are you, because if you're not with meeting with other people, and this is not like, I'm not preaching saying you got to go to church. I'm not like Bible thumping, like you have to go to church. It's a very important part of your Christian life, being there every Sunday or whenever your church meets. But the part of the reason why it's so important, on top of the fact that it's it's obedience to God and reverence and respect to God, it's that's like the best opportunity to meet people. Not meet people with the intention of finding a mate, just meet people in general, because just being alone, you're always going to fall. You know, in community, you're always going to thrive. I mean, I think that's as basic as you can get it. Like,
it really is.
With everything else, like whether it's singleness or, you know, like, how can I deal with my anger? Unfortunately, the best way to deal with that with other people. You know, like, people is always the answer. It's not, you're not going to win it. You're not going to do it by yourself. It's how can I get fit? The best way to get fit is to be in a class working out with other people,
or be on mission with those people who are doing it together and not alone. This is such useful information. Like, there is nothing more right now in my life that I am wanting more of is mentorship and community and counsel from other men around me. And Maurice, I appreciate you taking the time to do that with just me, with investing into me, because this is truly what it's about. This time in our lives, whether you're single, in a relationship, no matter what, this is what it's about. The community and being imparted with one another, iron sharpening iron. Yes. And so I appreciate you being here and sharing that information with me today, Maurice.
Yeah, no, it's always good to kind of stop and reflect on, look at what God has done. Whether you're single, whether you're married, like, look at what God is doing in your life. Ultimately, you're never alone because God is always with you. So as long as you have that mindset, I think, and it's just every day asking God, you know, reveal yourself to me today, so that all this other stuff that's happening doesn't become the priority, because you should be the priority.
Amen. So, thanks for that, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here. This was fun.